we have the Reverend Ben Richards of First United Methodist Church, Bonita Springs, here for the invocation.
Good evening and thank you. I'll just say, I just moved here a few months ago. It's a lovely place you have here and I'm glad to be a part of it. So thank you, and thank you to Mike Sheffield and to all of you for welcoming me this evening. We invite you to pray with me. Holy and patient God, I do pray for our city council and specifically for the work that they will undergo this evening. The important work of governance that extends outward from this place and these people that will affect the lives of many beyond even our knowing. We acknowledge and frankly we celebrate that our system of government is excellent, but know it is not impervious. We're reminded that greed and solipsism can usurp anything, politics, faith, even common sense. So tonight I pray that faithfulness and common sense will prevail in this important work, that each of us would be reminded, even inspired by the incredible privilege and responsibility of our connection with one another and the service to one another that lies before us, acknowledging that it is a connection that exists above all through your grace and is never limited by the delineators that we confess to find comfort in. Help us, O holy and patient God, to be accountable to you and through you to one another. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can the clerk read the roll?
Councilmember Bogas.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Purdon.
Here.
Councilmember Carr.
Here.
Mayor Gibson.
Here.
Councilmember Corey.
Here.
Councilmember Fullick.
Here.
Councilmember Fitzpatrick.
Here.
All right. Public comment. Do we have any people that would wish to speak only on agenda items but not the first readings?
And we do have one registered speaker, Deb Orton, and she could follow Mr. Moran.
Thank you, Mr. Sheffield. Hello, Mr. Mayor and City Council. My name is Kyle Moran. I first moved to Bonita Springs in 1993. I spent a lot of time today at the corner of Feltz and Wilson Streets right in the downtown. I'd like to talk to you about agenda item 9A, but before I do, I'd like to thank you all and city staff for an unbelievable job last night with Holiday in the Park. We were out there with our young kids and family and grandparents and some family friends and things, and you've just done an incredible job. You continue to raise the bar in the heart of our community quite literally, and the community is responding, and it's doing so in droves. I'd like to talk to you about the Rail to Trail project as agenda 9A. The benefits of that Rail to Trail project are wide-ranging and very significant. They have economic, health, safety, recreational benefits for our residents and our visitors and our businesses. And that extends throughout our city and into neighboring cities and throughout the entire county, and in fact, through the Gulf Coast, as this is a key corridor to connect what could be a 400-mile-plus trail. It's going to encourage tourism to the area. It's going to support economic development to the tune of 8 figures a year or more. That's $10 million or more a year. It reduces pedestrian injuries and deaths. It's great for school children. 11 schools within a mile of that corridor. That's 10,000 school children that could use this in some shape or form for getting to or from school, or certainly for recreational purposes. And it's securing a vital public transportation corridor capable of supporting diverse and simultaneous uses, including potential light rail transit and emergency evacuation. It's a very rare corridor. Very rarely would we get the chance to look at something like this, and it has tremendous value for our residents and our taxpayers. The price on the table is $349,000 an acre. If you look at comparable transactions near that corridor, the price is millions per acre. And to have that corridor in public hands is just a tremendous benefit, to the entire area. But we can't do it alone. And it's important for us to keep in mind. And I double-checked the figures on this. In fact, I even have my tax bill here, my Bonita Springs tax bill. And it shows that every year the city collects 81 mills on my property. And the Lee County General Revenue Fund collects 376 mills. That's 4.6 times. So for every dollar that the city gets from Bonita Springs, the county gets $4.6. That's about $60 million a year. I'm raising an 8-year-old boy in this community. He was at downtown Holiday in the Park last night. By the time he's of drinking age, 21 years old, this community will have paid $1 billion to Lee County. $1 billion by the time that young man is a real man. And you've got to ask yourselves, what are we getting in return? This is a critical project that links us to so many important parts of our future and to other communities in our area. I urge you to make it a big legislative priority to coordinate with our partners to make sure that the county gives our city what its taxpayers deserve. Really appreciate your wonderful service to our city, and let's make sure that we take advantage of this great once in a lifetime opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Deb Orton. I'm a resident of Bonita Springs, and I'm president of Friends of Bonita Sterile Rail Trail, or Friends of BERT. You'll be maybe surprised to know that Friends of BERT continues to grow. It's over 3,500 Friends of BERT. We have 26, about to get 2 more HOAs. So we're well over 26 endorsements that way. A couple weeks ago, I was out at Fort Myers Beach, invited to Fort Myers Beach council meeting, much like this, although in a trailer, right? Because they're still pulling together, and they wrote a resolution to endorse BERT. Even in the situation that they're in, they see the value and the tremendous value that this rail-to-trail project will be for the entire area, including themselves, because they would like to connect to it. So I want to, number one, thank you all for all of your support. I know we spent a lot of time recently with the staff and with each of you, really diving deep into what this means and answering questions and getting your support. Thank you for that. Thank you all for the work that you do every single day. I don't know if I could do it, although I do spend a lot of time on this, right? So my ask is really about 10A, and that's making BERT a legislative priority. What I know from the last couple of weeks of meetings with the state, FDOT, with the state in other ways, is that making this a legislative priority for Bonita Springs and for Estero, and to Kyle Moran's point, with the county, then dollars flow from DOT, because they're checking this out too, to make sure that there's a resolution, to make sure that it's a legislative priority and that they're putting good money towards it and making a good investment. The other one, of course, is with the state. We need the state's support in order to make this a reality. So please put it on your legislative priorities. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comment on regular agenda items, not first readings? All right, seeing none, we have a presentation for Mayor Rick.
So we all going down? What are we doing?
Down. Up to you guys. Anyone come down?
Probably mayor to mayor is good.
Let me take a photograph anyway.
Okay. I guess we're getting up. All right.
Yeah, it's just tradition that normally when somebody's going off a council or the mayor, we just like to have him up to thank him for his years of service and everything that he's done for the city. I know this gentleman, really loves Bonita, and that's why he ran originally. And we just wanted to say thank you, and we appreciate all the hard work you did. So thank you, Rick.
All right.
Anybody else want to?
So, thank you, Mayor. On behalf of your staff, and I know also that the Lee County Sheriff's Office is here to honor your service to the city as well. And Rose Kennedy is quoted as saying that life is not a matter of milestones, but a matter of moments. And to share with you all through those moments, the mayor, former Mayor Rick, you provided, strong and conviction during the pandemic. Ian, Helene, and Milton, and showed strength in your staff. So we wanted to greatly appreciate that. And we have a little parting gift. It's not flowers. It's more appropriate for, and it's also a tribute to your service to the Tree Advisory Board as well.
Dad has some photos for you for your new home when you get it going.
I knew she'd have to interrupt me one more time. 4 years of interruptions.
I didn't disappoint.
That's for sure. Anyways, my aunt and uncle and grandmother bought a restaurant on Old 41 in 1948. They came down here. My uncle was a chef. And my aunt ran the dining room, and they came down to run the Villa Bonita, which was owned by Walter Mack. Well, they came down, and Walter Mack had a resort up in Lake George, New York State. So he sent my aunt and uncle down here to run Villa Bonita during the season. Well, somehow the federal government caught up with Walter Mack, and I guess he missed paying his taxes, so he went to prison. Well, he owned Barefoot Beach. And Barefoot Beach sat undeveloped until he died in prison, and then it got developed. But anyways, what is now Maria's was just a little stand called Anchor Barbecue. And they built it out and sold it in 61. Well, his last wife, Carl's last wife, passed away in 96, and I got involved with the estate, his estate on South Riverside Drive. And the Historical Society with Jane Hogg pulled the mortgage on it. And I ran for mayor's survey 5 different times as a fundraiser to get the mortgage paid off, and it finally got paid off. So I've been involved with the city for at least 25 years to get elected to mayor. So it's not an overnight success. So thank you so much. It's been a privilege helping the people. That's what it's all about. I'm here to help people, and the more the merrier. Thank you. You two can explain that story afterwards.
Wow. That was like her.
Thank you.
It was.
All right, thank you, everyone. Public hearings, 7A. Clerk?
7A, This is the first reading of a zoning ordinance of the City of Bonita Springs, Florida, rezoning approximately 2 acres from the Residential Plan Development, RPD, zoning district to a Residential Plan Development, RPD, to allow 6 single-family units and approving a deviation located at the corner of Wisconsin Street and Lawhon Family Road, address 9650 Lawhon Family Road, strap number 34-47-25-B2-00259.0040, Bonita Springs, Florida 34135, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. I've asked to change up first readings a little bit just to make things more efficient. So we'll have staff do a very brief introduction. And if the applicant wants to say anything, they can. If they don't want to, that's fine too. And then there'll be public comment.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everybody. Mike Fegon with Community Development for the record, senior planner and the main land use planner on this particular case for staff. As Mike suggested, this is the first reading of a zoning ordinance, and in your land development code, zoning ordinances require 2 public hearings before taking effect. One thing to sort of consider with these first readings, and the mayor kind of alluded to it, is that staff usually thinks of these as the coming attractions for you, something to get ready for with the second reading, which is typically the reading where you have the full bore presentations from staff and especially from the applicant. Another way of looking at these first readings is that if there's an issue or something that's really sticking at you that you want to make sure gets sufficiently addressed as part of the applicant presentation or the staff presentation with the second reading, this is a perfect opportunity and a perfect forum to bring that up and express it now. If you have additional questions, of course, you're always welcome to ask them. This is a public hearing after all. You might not get all the answers tonight because, like I said, and like the green sheet suggests, the second reading is where the applicant and staff are going to be prepared to give the more detailed presentation. As far as this particular case itself, this one was heard by the zoning board last month and was voted favorably by a vote of 5-0. That has to do with a rezoning of approximately 2 acres, all for single-family development. This is a zoning designation that was already bestowed on the property previously, but the previous plan that was approved back in 2006 has expired. So this is sort of a retooling of that, a fresh concept plan coming in that they're asking approval for. You're talking about 6 single-family homes spread out over 7 lots, that 7th lot being used for water management. And like I said, and like your green sheet shows, this case was heard by the zoning board back in November. They voted unanimously for it, including the 1 deviation. Meeting minutes are attached to your packet tonight from that meeting if you have any questions about those. I am here on behalf of staff. The applicant's representative is also here in case you have any questions, but with that, the staff recommendation is to move it to second reading.
Did the applicant want to say anything? Like I said, you don't have to say anything.
Just for the record, Aaron Spence with Mostrict Engineering on behalf of Prime Bid Construction. Unless there's any questions for me, I'm happy with that presentation there.
We'll move on to. No, we're no longer doing motions to approve. It's automatically going to go to second reading from now on.
But it is a public hearing.
But it is a public hearing, so we will have a public comment. And then after public comment, if anybody has a specific question, you may ask it. They may not answer at this meeting, but at the second reading, they'll know what your concern was. So.
I'd like to ask Aaron, are you a FAU alum?
Yes, I am.
Brilliant young man.
Okay. We'll go to the public comment.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment? All right. Does anybody specifically have questions on this item? No? All right. We'll go to the next item.
no roll?
Item B. Nope. Don't need it anymore. Automatically goes to second reading.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
This is the first reading of a zoning ordinance of the City of Bonita Springs, Florida, rezoning approximately 4.6 plus or minus acres from the 2-family conservation TFC-2 zoning district to a residential plan development RPD to develop up to 48 2-family dwelling units and approving 1 deviation located at the southeast corner of Dean Street and Matheson Avenue, comprising of 11035, 11089, 11113, and 11125 Dean Street, Bonita Springs, Florida, 34135, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. Evening, Mary. Very, very brief intro.
Okay, thank you. Mary Zizzo for the record. This is a case where there are 5 parcels next to each other at the corner of Matheson and Dean. They are requesting 48 two-family villas attached, which looks similar to a duplex structure, but it's all on one commonly owned parcel. At zoning board in November, the zoning board did recommend denial 4-1. You will see those reasons outlined in the report. We've also included the public comment received in your packet as well. The applicant is here. At this time, staff recommends moving to the second reading.
All right. If the applicant doesn't want to say anything, you guys are fine. We can just move on to public comment.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I'm Wayne Arnold, a certified planner representing the applicant. I think we would welcome your feedback and prepare to give our evidence and testimony at the second reading.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Public comment? All right. Do you need to swear them in? Yeah. Sure.
Ma'am, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do. Good evening, everybody. I live on Roslyn Street, just off of Dean Street. Oh, Sharon Kingston is my name. The property across the street from me backs up onto this development, which is totally, totally wrong for that area. Whoever gave permission for the corner of Dean and Old 41, they don't have enough parking. This place, at the last meeting that I was at, they have 48 people or places, which will, of course, be at least 2 people with 1 driveway, no garage, and only 9 extra spots. The school is a block away, block and a half away from grammar school. It's the wrong development for that area. That's Old Bonita. And they could put 5, it's 5 lots, right? Is that what you said? 5 lots?
Including the right-of-way.
Okay. They could put 5 duplexes there. They could make them high-end duplexes. That would be better. It does not need a community that doesn't even have parking. And nobody in my area likes it, including me. So I'm sure that half the people in the back there that live in that neighborhood do not want this. So I think you should vote against it. It's just too much use and not enough space, not proper space. Thank you.
Thank you. And Derek, do you want to blanket?
If there are more speakers for this item or the next item, please go ahead and stand now and raise your right hand. And you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Danny Freeman. I moved back here recently. I used to live here in the 90s. I've been around development my entire life. Was just doing some simple math at like 480 grand for those lots, or let's jump it to 960. That's 20,000 per unit. I don't know anywhere else where you can go build for $20,000 per unit. Maybe in the desert of Arizona or something like that. And yes, everything that lady just had to say. That school is right down the street. That whole sidewalk is used very much in the morning and the evenings. To have 48 more units there, you're probably going to have a problem, maybe an accident, maybe a pedestrian fatality. There's also a school bus stop right there at the corner of Dean and Matheson there. So I think the developer is just overshooting which should be even brought to this council. I could see what the lady was saying before, maybe give them 3 or 4 per acre, something like that. But that's not why I moved to that neighborhood. I moved to that neighborhood because it was nice and quiet, okay? Now you have the EV bikes and things like that that are on that sidewalk. And what is the developer really asking? I'm not that familiar with the project, or what is he willing to give to mitigate this whole thing? That whole street of Dean to Old 41 to Imperial is so well used because it's its way in and out of Old 41 and to that school site. So I'm kind of discouraged that the thing has even made it this far. And I thank you for your time, and I will compliment you guys on what you have done with Old 41. That's what made me move to that neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. For the record, Zach Smith. I live on Dean Street, directly in front of the proposed property. I've lived there for 11 years. That property sat vacant the entire time. A parcel that large, we knew it was going to be a development coming in, something of that nature. It wasn't individual properties, so we knew something large was coming. It was only a matter of time. Many of you know I also own a downtown business, so I'm very familiar with the need for infill projects. I don't oppose the infill projects. I would rather see our downtown developed than continue building east of 75 and destroying our watershed. However, there is a difference between development and smart development. They will argue that they meet code, but I would say code is the very minimum, the lowest set bar. If we are asking for a variance, then we should expect the bar to be set a little bit higher in this instance. I will agree with my neighbors that the neighborhood does not support a project of this size. When Mosaic went in down the road, there were no improvements made to Dean Street. To my understanding, they were supposed to put in a roundabout, and they failed to do so, and it was never done. We all know that the school district wants to increase the size of Bonita Elementary. We also know that we have, large population increase, and we have a project of this scale coming in. None of these improvements or developments have created any improvements on Dean Street. We also changed the through truck traffic rule. Now those trucks are going down Dean Street. Again, no improvements were made on Dean Street. I would simply argue that they need to reduce the number of dwellings, increase their on-site parking. Please take a look at their parking calculations. I would say they're very faulty at the least. I heard at their last presentation where they were wise enough to deny it overwhelmingly. So I think they need to reduce their dwelling to increase parking, and while they're at it, they should increase their on-site water retention just for the safety. We all know that there's a lot of flooding issues down there. I think with some revisions, this project might have some legs, but in its current form, I implore you to please take a closer look at the plans and encourage some redevelopment. Thank you very much.
Any other public comment on this one? All right, seeing none, we'll go to item C.
Wait a minute, what?
Oh, does council have any questions on it? Sorry.
Well, I'll object to moving it to second reading. So I make a motion not to move it.
Well, we're supposed to always move them to second reading.
Well,
that's when the applicants can make their case.
with last meeting, we voted against moving to second reading. So, I think the people who are objecting to this have some legitimate points. So if we're going to move it to second reading, then I suggest that everyone on council make a record of their wanting to move it to second reading. I, for one, will make a motion to object to second reading.
Well, the applicant doesn't make their case until the second reading, so
I don't
that's
care.
why
They
we're
can
supposed to let it go
well,
to second reading.
I know that's what we normally do, but last meeting we didn't allow them. We moved to object to first reading. So we set the precedent the last meeting, Mike, and
It may have been the wrong precedent.
Exactly.
well,
Derek, do you want to?
Well, I just, first of all, before going any further, is there a second? Because if there's not, then the issue is resolved. But if you're going to move to take any action on this, Florida law requires that in order to deny you would need to state the basis of your denial based on specific citations to Bonita Springs Code, which I would feel uncomfortable proceeding without having full presentations. So we can ask for presentations today.
Please, no applause.
I will point out that in addition to the comments that staff made, the basis, really the good reason for doing a first reading is so that you can get these comments, so the applicant can incorporate those comments, and whether they either respond to them and say how they still otherwise meet the code, or incorporate changes. When you do everything without having some public input at the first reading, what ends up happening is you get requests for changes at the second reading and there's no time to implement it. So the reason for doing 2 hearings, partially that is to give you time and the applicant time to adjust conditions or to adjust design plans and come back with a revised approval. So, you know, with that, I would see if there is someone willing to second the motion. If not, then what my recommendation would be, if you're going to proceed to denial, that you at least have the report unless there is basis in the staff presentation, that's an applicant presentation submitted on the record for that denial.
I think Laura was ahead of me.
Yeah. Laura, did you have any?
No, I was just going to ask Derek to.
Right, Nigel?
So my question, Derek, is obviously with the tenor of the meeting right now, the developer has an understanding, isn't it fair just to move it forward in between now and the next reading? They've got time to adjust, correct?
They've got time to adjust, but also it gives them an opportunity to reach out to any members of the public, have any conversations, incorporate any concerns. So really what I would recommend, I know that only Councilman Corey has mentioned so far, if there are other concerns or any issues that the council would like to see addressed by second reading, to raise those concerns now. Otherwise, raising them at the second reading doesn't provide an opportunity to make revisions, and it's never a good idea to change plans on the fly.
So, Mr. Mayor, just clarification. You said we are no longer going to question if we're moving ahead with first reading. We're automatically going to second reading, comments back, adjustments made or not made, choice of the developer. But then Chris Corey has challenged that. So is this now going to be policy, or is it going to be occasionally we're going to object and have a questioning?
I can probably help on that. The city had always processed zoning applications with 3 steps. So the city previously used to do a permission to advertise. That was the first thing that many years ago, before my term as city attorney, with permission to advertise. And I don't really understand what the purpose of that was at the time, but then they would have opportunities where an applicant who applied and petitioned and is entitled to a process was denied even the opportunity to have first reading. We dropped that and moved forward with and continued the process of moving on to second reading. Now, is there a place for making motions between first and second reading? Absolutely. You could move to continue it, to move it further back. Maybe there are concerns that are raised that don't justify going to the next immediate hearing. So what I would say is unless there is an objection, as Councilman Corey's brought up, there generally would not need to be a motion to move it to second reading. We're already processing it to second reading. Nothing in Florida statute says you have to take action at both public hearings. You have to take action at the second public hearing for certain. But can a motion be made to stop it? Absolutely.
But it has to be seconded.
That's why I'm.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And should have a reason.
It has to have a reason under Florida law, and that's.
I will make a reason.
Do I have a clarifying question?
Yeah.
So number one, if we go through with it now, this gives the developer the ability to adjust. So now if they're gonna come back with less units, this is the ability for this 2-week time period is the time when they're gonna make those adjustments. Number two, if this was something, hypothetically, if we all didn't want it anyways, right? Not saying that's the case. Not letting them have first reading would not be the way to do it, because if you don't give them first reading, we are already in the de facto position of not giving them the ability to get it out the first time. So now they can, now we're putting ourselves in a legally liable situation where we're not going to win. We're not going to get what we want by doing it that way, if that was the case anyways, by not allowing them to have first reading, correct?
So the concern, here's the general recommendation I would give. Some communities actually do everything at first reading, and they don't even have essentially a second reading. It's just a rubber stamp at that point. I don't think that's particularly helpful. The statute says there's 2 public hearings when there's only 1 public hearing when there's straight rezoning, but when there's a plan development, there's 2 public hearings. The concerns of the public even though they may not be experts, regarding compatibility and other concerns, traffic, these are things that you can have lay testimony on that can be valid concerns for basis of a denial. So you have these concerns, you get them raised in the first hearing, you have the concerns that council members may have had from reading the packet, may have had from interactions with the public or the applicant. You get all those concerns out in the first hearing. There's a huge benefit to that. And then you have those addressed by second hearing. We have scheduled this second hearing, it's not going to be heard till February. So it's not going to be in 2 weeks, it's going to be in February. So that, just to give you, if you weren't aware of that, that gives you understand there's a little more time to work on issues. The advantage is by having the presentation, having discussion at first reading, is you're able to get those issues addressed, because there's also, for the public, you know, I'm certain there were members of the public who came to the zoning board who are not here. They show up to one hearing. There's a neighborhood informational meeting. Then they show up to zoning board. Then they have a first reading. Then they hear second reading. They hear all these hearings, and every time there's a hearing, the members of the public, they get a little more exhausted. They've sat through it a number of times. They want to know when it's actually going to happen. And when they hear recommendation denial at zoning board, many times they don't show up to, they think it's done. And so I think it's very helpful to be as clear as possible that the final decision lies at the second reading, and to make sure that everyone, including the public, know that, so that they have the opportunity to show up and pass those concerns on to the very last moment.
So if we do not do first reading, do we put ourselves in the position of being sued for not even allowing them to be heard out?
You would have it would certainly raise a due process concern.
Okay. That's all I need to hear.
My question was basically, if we moved it forward, can we comment on our concerns now?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just want to make sure we can still do that.
We should.
We want you to do.
So, I don't have a problem moving it forward, but what I heard from the people that are here and from what apparently has been said before, and in looking at this, there's a density problem and there's a parking problem, and those need to be addressed, because if they're not, I'd have a real problem with this.
And clarity would be nice also on what they're currently allowed and what they're asking for. Because my initial was, wow, that's a lot in a little space. But then looking at it, it doesn't seem like they're asking for anything more than what they're already allowed to have. And if somebody comes at you, so say they come back next time around, they have even less on there. Now they're applying for it with less than they're entitled to. So that makes it, you know, a lot more difficult for us to deny them, I feel like.
I think that it's your district, but I border it, right? And I feel what these folks do, just because they're entitled to this much, is it in the community's best interest and the city's best interest to give them this much? And I don't think.
Right, but I'm saying if they're asking for less, they come back and they're asking for less, then what?
Let me revise my objection. My objection is that the zoning board denied the request 4-1. And my other part of my objection is the draft zoning ordinance associated with this item is not attached. It will be provided by the city attorney. So the zoning board objected to it 4-1. We don't have the draft ordinance. So I don't think we're in a position to move it to second reading, simply because we don't have what the draft ordinance would look like.
There is,
No applause, please.
there's a copy.
Yeah, I am not raising the objection just simply based upon this case, but based upon what we did at the last meeting. I'm just trying to set the rules for how we're going to handle this going forward. So with other cases. So, you know, understand that I'm just trying to figure out how we're going to handle these things.
Well, based on the last meeting is why I was looking at changing this, because we're not supposed to deny them at first reading.
Well, but we did.
Yeah.
And Mr. Mayor, not to interrupt, but I think the councilman is raising some concerns, and I think that with each new council, even though we're not really looking at a large turnover, there's a different personality and different expectations. So what I think we can do and take advantage of this opportunity is to kind of highlight what we'd be looking for in a first reading, what you all would like to see, and I would recommend that we take advantage of this time by outlining whatever objections, concerns, or questions that you all have. We've already stated the second hearing is not going to take place until February, so there's plenty of time for whatever changes needed to happen to be brought back. My thought would be, if you all have specific issues or there's things that are not addressed clearly for you, let's take advantage of this time and maybe highlight those for the applicant. If they are able to address those, all the better. If come February we come back in ready for Valentine's Day and no one has made any changes, the opportunity has been provided, the process was there, and the applicant chose not to take advantage of that. So I think that we've already started looking at the number of units and a little bit of the design. I don't know if we want to go into a little bit more detail on that, or if we just want to state that the applicant should be able to clearly explain to this council and the public why this design works, why this deviation not only does not detract from the neighboring community, but kind of adds to a quality of life, meeting the standards of the Land Development Code. Mr. Smith said perhaps if you're asking for a deviation, it should be a higher standard. We've been down that path, and if you would like to make that change, we can make that change, but that's not currently in the regulation. We can have that discussion at a later date. But when this item was brought to the zoning board, several of these items, plus traffic, neighborhood specific issues were all raised. If there are things that we would like them to specifically address, I know I can provide an opinion, but you all as the body that makes the decision, if there's something specific you want to ask, this would be a great time to do it. So I don't want to hog the microphone and take from your time.
Anybody have comments or questions?
Who am I? My name is John Dolmer. I'm sorry, I did not.
He's staff. He's staff.
I am the Community Development Director.
Everyone has a copy.
This is not a cross-examination, but I will come over and answer your question. Just give me 1 second.
Jamie, did you have any comments?
Well, I agree with what the public have said. I think it's too many dwelling units. The parking is an issue. I just would like to see more of what and why they're thinking the way they are, I suppose. And I just have a hard time picturing that sitting on the corner of Dean Street and Matheson. I just think it's too much.
No applause, please. We don't do applause.
So I definitely want to see more information and hopefully have it reduced. I know the development is important and I think it needs to be done, but I think it needs to be done smarter than 48 dwelling units on that piece of parcel.
Jesse, any comments?
I feel like this is one of those I worry about if we do not take the opportunity to try to get what might be perceived as a better deal for the city and the community. If we don't give them first reading, they don't come back with something that's more palatable. If they don't come back with something that's more palatable and we don't approve anything, then we're getting sued. So if there's, not to put them on the spot, so I don't know how many units we would want to take off to even make this work. I don't know what would work for them. I don't know what would work for us. But say we want a better deal, right? We don't even get to have that conversation if we don't go to second reading. And then they come back and then they sue us. So there's not really a great win, but at least we can try to negotiate something that is a better deal come second reading. And then then hypothetically, if you still didn't want to vote for it because it wasn't enough, then we can't statutorily be put in a box that we didn't give them the option to be heard fully. And then we can proceed to vote however we feel. But I feel like if we just cut it off now, we're just going to end up in court, honestly, is what I worry about.
Didn't we just heard Mr. Smith put it out there, and obviously the people agreed with it. The simple fact is that they're not saying like other times where we've had people come and say, we don't want any development there, period. They get it. They know that something's going to go there. It's just something that's more appropriate for the neighborhood, and again, not as dense, not as many units, and that doesn't frighten you when you think about kids 8, 9 months a year on those sidewalks. I agree with that.
I still go back to the statement in the green sheet that says, the case was heard by the zoning board on 11/19/2024 with a recommendation to deny the request 4-1, expressing concern of the requested dwelling unit product density and appropriateness of the requested deviation. So if the applicant can come forward, that's all we have. If we can get more information about what the zoning board was concerned with, and if the applicant can address those concerns, then I'm for moving it at second reading, but with the understanding that there are still significant questions about this.
Absolutely.
Well, the applicant knows that you have more questions about it now, so I'm sure that they'll probably be happy to reach out talk to you in the meantime, so we can come up with something before then. Jim, did you have something?
Yes, specifically, if we're going on a pure zoning basis and what's allowable there for future use, it seems as though you got to go ahead and approve it. The use and the consideration that's been applied to this lot is probably inappropriate, and that the developer choosing to go in there has made the decision to, for lack of a better term, remove the consideration of the neighborhood and the general feeling of the city. So where I wrestle with it is, legally, in terms of it's a future use designation of X, and that's what we're making a decision on, then you probably have to go ahead and approve it. But when it gets to the other aesthetic piece of it, the 48 units and what that designated future use is defined for, we've left this wide open that, quite honestly, from our end, you can drive a truck through this thing, and technically they're probably allowed to do it, but there's it seems to be a disregard for the feeling of the community, and if that can be addressed by the developer, I guess I'd feel more comfortable with it. But on the technicality of the future use, I do have my concerns about that.
Okay, and
I know you didn't mean to miss me. However, I will add my 2 cents in that it sounds like we're all talking about process here. Are we going to do first reading? Because right now, I'm sort of saying that the applicant should come up and say X, Y, and Z. You guys are all wrong to get you thinking along the line of W. But either we're doing a first reading or we're not doing the first reading. And Chris has said we set precedent. We did not set precedent. Actually, we broke precedent last meeting, and nothing was said. No, we don't applaud, it's inappropriate. And so you're correcting it, but are you going to stand, are we doing it X? Why are we doing a combination and consciously deciding we'll do a reading on first? Because it's not even fair to the developers. Do you bring everybody in, or do you just bring in key people?
Yeah.
It's expensive.
Well, but they don't make their case at first reading. So we're supposed to, if we have any concerns or questions, we can present them, so that way they know what they need to tackle.
But Chris is continually saying, I want to deny first reading. And you're saying that isn't even on the table.
We no longer have to vote on, it's not a requirement to vote on first reading to go to second reading. So.
Okay.
But, I mean, if somebody did want to make a motion to deny it, that could be heard. If there was a second and it could be voted on, I don't think it's a good idea to do, because we shouldn't deny them at first reading. They should always have their chance to go to second reading and make their case. But I mean, it is a possibility. We would be able to do that still, but hopefully we let everything go through. We make our case now what we'd like to see changed, so that way they have an opportunity to change it.
Well, I'll make it simple. I still have a motion to deny first reading.
Is there a second? Motion fails. But,
your first time here, right?
But motion dies for lack of a second. Okay.
Okay, so unless, Jim?
Yeah, I do have one question. Do we have notes or comments from the zoning board relative to why the decline was?
In the packet.
I guess I missed it.
It's in the packet, the minutes. You can also
Okay,
go back
all
and
right.
watch
There
the
you go. Thank you.
meeting.
Then I will.
Because sometimes you get more out of watching the meeting than what's in the minutes.
Yeah.
Mayor, I'm not even sure I know the answer to this question, but I think it could be helpful for the members of the public to understand. But John, could you, or Jackie or Mary, to someone, the current zoning district, how many units per acre are in that current zoning district, and what is the acreage or units per acre that are requested in the PD?
The future land use allows for 11.6 dwelling units per acre, and I believe we are at 10.3.
And the comp plan allows 11.6.
Right, 11.6 is what's allowed, and they're requesting in the 10s.
So I want to make that just clear for the members of the public too, that there's two reasons you may go from a straight zoning district to a planned development. One of them would be to increase something that you're not allowed to in the current zoning district. The other reason might be that you, because of the nature of the development, you may want to make adjustments, and that allows for purposes of compatibility or buffering and other things. Whereas if you were just slap a bunch of lots on this, you might have 11.6 units with their own individual access points onto Dean Street. I don't know what the specifics are, but there's a lot of reasons why that is, and I don't think that was enough focus at the zoning board to say, this is what the base entitlements were, this is what they're asking for, and I think that's helpful for the public to know going forward.
Yeah, and so the deviation wasn't for the density. It was the spacing in between the units or something? Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, which allows more buffering on the sides, but that'll all get into on the second reading, so. If there's no other comments from council, then we'll move on to item C.
This is the first reading of a zoning ordinance of the City of Bonita Springs, Florida, rezoning approximately 6 acres from the residential plan development RPD zoning district to a residential plan development RPD to develop up to 10 dwelling units and approving 4 deviations located at the northwest corner of Pennsylvania Avenue and Arroyo Avenue, strap number 33-47-25-B2-00201.0000, Bonita Springs, Florida, 34135, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. Mary, you're up again.
Thank you. So this was a request on 6 acres to put 10 single-family dwelling units on the property. The current residential plan development, the master concept plan has expired. Therefore, in order to come in and develop, they had to do another residential plan development. And this request only includes the 10 dwelling units with docking facilities as well. The zoning board did recommend approval 5-0. Staff recommends approval. We do have the applicant here if we need,
Okay.
or if you would like to say anything.
Did you want to say anything, or?
No, I'd just like to be sent to the second reading so we can have due process for public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. Any public comment? All right, seeing none.
Any council
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Council, any questions, concerns on this one? All right, seeing none, we will move on to consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the
Motion
consent
to
agenda?
approve?
Second? Anyone?
Second.
All right, Nigel, thank you. Roll call?
Councilmember Bogas.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Purdon.
Aye.
Councilmember Carr.
Aye.
Mayor Gibson.
Aye.
Councilmember Corey.
Aye.
Councilmember Fullick.
Aye.
Councilmember Fitzpatrick.
Aye.
All right, any comments on these items? All right, number 9, mayor and council member items. Councilmember Corey.
Yes, you'll have in your packet a resolution that was passed by the Fort Myers Beach City Council in support of the Bonita Estero Rail Trail project. It's my understanding, although it's not included, that Fort Myers City Council passed the same kind of resolution. And as we move forward with the Rails Trails project, I think it's important that the Bonita Council, Bonita Springs City Council, adopt a similar type of resolution. So what I'm asking for is that staff be given the project, project to take a look at what Fort Myers drafted, make it appropriate and bring it forward at the next meeting for our approval.
Second.
Sounds good to me. Any other comments on that?
No problems.
I have some questions. How are we going to connect Fort Myers Beach to Burt? Because we're going horizontally, we're going a little bit south, but then we're going north on the railroad tracks,
There is a loop already planned.
And how much extra is that going to be?
Oh, that's not part of it.
It's not.
Burt's standalone.
So there's no.
It's a future use.
No, because to get Burt started, we have to accrue $80 million within a year.
82 million.
Now it's up to 82 million.
No,
See, it was originally 80 million.
No, it's not.
And so there's no extra money to bring in Fort Myers Beach?
It's not part of this project.
Yeah, the 82 million is to purchase the railroad right away, and that's just for Burt. But before Burt was, or a possibility, they had already done. I think was it Sunshine Trail or it was something that where
we have
they
Sun Rails.
Where they already had a planned path going through the beach to go around. But then as soon as Burt was a possibility, the main trail will be Burt, and then the other one that goes to the beach will be an offshoot from Burt.
And
but it's
there's
totally
no
separate.
extra money for that.
No, it's
no right of ways. We just.
It's a separate thing. Yeah.
It's a second project.
Oh, it's a second project.
Yep.
So, but in the Fort Myers resolution, there's no commitment of money. Bonita Springs committed $1.5 million. So did Estero. We're still working on Collier, but where's the money?
Where's the money from what?
For this.
Well,
Design for even design.
We're trying to raise the money to
We're
do the
trying to
purchase
raise the
for it.
money.
On top of 80 million, shouldn't we do one project, like get Burt done, and then show, wow, how fabulous it is?
We are just doing Burt.
just
Their
doing
resolution is in support of Burt. It's not to do their thing. It's they're supporting us doing Burt.
But with no money committed.
They're committed. They're supporting the
And I
Burt.
know they're hurting. I mean, I reach out to Fort Myers.
Laura, they're supporting the Burt project, which is separate and apart.
It's a vote of confidence.
It's a vote of confidence in the Burt project that Fort Myers Council passed. So all we're doing is saying, we need to pass a similar resolution at Bonita Springs.
But we have.
No, we have.
We have done.
So to clarify, I think what you're asking is specific to do a resolution supporting the Burt Trail. You do have overarching resolutions we've done specifically supporting transit, we bikes and pedestrian, school right-of-way, school, safe access to school. You have a general resolution to that effect. I think the request is to have a specific one in support of this actual trail, the Burt Trail. Fort Myers Beach, from what I understand, Town Council supported, no money committed, just that they support the Burt project moving forward because they hope someday to connect to it. So I believe the Village of Estero will be bringing up a similar item to theirs and to this. And what the thought process is if the council has a resolution in support of the specific Burt Trail, that can be utilized in seeking funding sources.
Does it?
But it would not. The resolution staff brings back would also not have a funding source in it. It would be a general resolution of the council in support of this specific trail.
It allows them to seem like a more credible, recognized organization because they have the support of the city. So it allows them to go and ask for money and say, hey, I'm not just some random ragtag group of people. I have the support of every city that's involved in it.
Right, absolutely.
And some of us are actually out looking for private funding, trying to get resources from other government entities. This is not Bonita and Estero and Naples on its own.
Of course not.
But us speaking with one voice instead of 6 different voices is what we're trying to accomplish here. That's all this is for. If I'm wrong, Chris, tell me.
No, I'll make a motion to approve passage of this motion.
Second.
One further question, though. It doesn't in any way weaken the resolution that we already have in place for the money that we've committed.
So to clarify, yeah, the resolution you had previously, many moons ago, did not incorporate money either. It was a general support of rails to trails of the Sun Coast and the coastal loop. I think it was more in general, the coastal loop, to support more trails within the city. And there was no money committed. What the $1 million you're discussing, I believe, was a motion that council authorized staff to provide for a grant application. We previously did a joint grant application with multiple jurisdictions. Additionally, you have $5 million of road impact fees in your current fiscal year and several past fiscal years committed to Sun Trails in general. You never specifically designated just BERT, but that gives you the opportunity to support opportunities that come forward. You took 1.5 or what, 1.2 out of that to commit to a grant application. It's not removed from the general budget because we never do that until a grant application is successful and a contract is signed. But you did kind of earmark that mark. So that's where that funds are coming from. If the direction from council is to prepare a resolution in support of specifically the BERT Trail, we would also recommend it's not going to include any specific funding amount because that's a policy decision of council and the other jurisdictions as the process moves forward.
All right, we have a motion and second. Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Purdon.
Aye.
Councilmember Carr.
Aye.
Mayor Gibson.
Aye.
Councilmember Corey.
Aye.
Councilmember Fullick.
Aye.
Councilmember Fitzpatrick.
Aye.
Councilmember Bogas.
Aye.
Item 10, city manager items.
Thank you. Did you?
It's gonna be in their mind.
Okay.
Oh,
So, yeah, I just noticed that typically the city attorney has an item line here which isn't on this agenda, so I'll let him.
That's all right. So I do need to make a request of the council. If you recall, a few months ago, we had a zoning approval on Riverbend that the council did approve and was challenged by neighbors in Bonita Bay. The corporation is Somax that brought the challenge. We have 2 cases currently proceeding, a writ of cert, which is a direct appeal, and a comp plan consistency challenge indicating requesting that the courts invalidate the council's actions on that rezoning, finding that there are provisions that were inconsistent with our comprehensive plan. Both cases are proceeding. We have a mediation scheduled for January 2nd in the comp plan consistency case. It is unlikely that we will have a mediation in the other case, but in either case, what myself and David Theriak are looking for is a member of council to be delegated to participate in those mediations. So it would need to be somebody who has availability for an all-day session on January 2nd. And I apologize, but that was the best time frame we had.
I'm more than happy to do it if council is okay with that.
And this is the one that was over on Old 41, or I'm sorry, off of the river?
Yeah.
Off the river.
Off the river.
They were gonna do condo docks and so.
And they brought the big thing, and, yeah, okay. All right.
But it's the
neighbors. The city.
The neighbors
approved
wanted
the rezoning.
Right.
Yeah, so it's just mediation. You're there to kind of
Listen
learn everything
and
and
report back to the council.
Correct.
So as long as everybody's happy with Councilman
I
Foley,
mean, mediation, it's obligatory, like we have to do the mediation
We're
steps?
obligated under the case management plan to do mediation. And, the mediation will include the property owner who approved the rezoning, so the city is involved, but the city isn't really the party who's negotiating terms of the development. Those terms might have to come back to the city, so that's the extent of our involvement. And I apologize, But, you know, right after the holiday, the advantage of doing it sooner rather than later is that it could save everybody, including the taxpayers, money if we resolve the case amicably without having to continue and have those mediations generally much closer to trial.
And the council member present renders no personal opinions nor opinions on behalf of the council, just there to listen and then come back to all of us.
Well, we try to keep them in line.
I'll behave.
Did we let them go to second reading, just for clarity?
No.
They did go to,
approved it.
they did.
Remember?
Chris, did you have a comment?
Could you comment, there was an article in the paper today about Cape Coral and cases involving 3 fishermen that sued over plans for the river in Cape Coral. And the city of Cape Coral is charging them with the cost of pursuing litigation involving their decision. So as I understand it, if somebody wants to engage in litigation against cities in Florida, the state law is that if you don't succeed, the city can charge you for the cost of their legal defense. So I just want to make sure I understand how that works and if the opponents to what we decided are aware of it.
So the general rule for all litigation is that neither party is entitled to attorney's fees and costs unless there is the cause of action allows for it or there is a contract in place. Generally, land use does not provide for a cause of action. However, there are instances where if offers are made in good faith and rejected, or if there are claims made in the suit against the city that carry attorney's fees provisions, and then those fees are reciprocal. So in every case where you're entitled to attorney's fees, the other side is entitled to those fees should they win. So if you recall the Raptor Bay litigation that the city engaged in, we had well over $1 million in attorney's fees. That's not including our attorney's fees. We paid their fees, and then we spent several $100,000 paying the fees for arguing about the fees. So in that case, there was an entitlement to fees, and because we lost, they were entitled to them. So, you know, what it sounds like, I'm not familiar with the case, but it sounds like the city has won on the merits of a matter that had an attorney's fees provision.
It involved a case where the city council took an action with respect to the quality of, protecting the quality of the water of the river that ran through. The fishermen, 3 fishermen, objected to what they planned because they said, whatever you're doing, you're going to ruin the quality of the water. So it seemed to be a disagreement over what the environmental impact would be. The courts upheld the right of the city, but the city is now taking the position, and it was reported in the Cape Coral Press and other locations, that the city is now saying, you lost, you pay our outside legal fees because we hired expert counsel for it, much like I would assume David Theriak. So, you know, I just want to understand if we go down this path where people disagree with what we come up with as a decision and we try to, you know, are they going to be liable for those fees if we want to say, too bad, you want to...
At this point, neither of the cases that we're dealing with right now would have an attorney's fees provision that I think would play into it. What I will tell you is I'll do one better. So I have been working for the city for several years now, and we'll probably end up renegotiating my fee structure, and we just renegotiated David's fee structure. Part of what I would like to do, given a recent case in Florida, says that in government conditions, you usually are doing work at a reduced fee. So David's rate is much lower than his standard rate. And that puts city's at a disadvantage. Because if we have a large lawsuit with a big corporation and they're paying their lawyers $900 an hour and we have a reduced rate contract for $300 an hour, then they're not concerned about the attorney's fees. So we have to be concerned, and that becomes a negotiation point against the city because suddenly the developer isn't risking our fees. So there is a case that basically says that if your fee arrangements are structured properly, we can pass on the full rate.
Wow.
So the rate that I charge the city of Bonita Springs is $225 an hour. The rate I charge my private clients is $600 an hour. Well, if we were in litigation and my rate, we could get my rate for that cost, that's going to be a significant detriment to unfounded claims against the city. Because it has to be unfounded in order for them to get the fees. And it helps us with the attorney's fees, helps us in negotiation for settlement. So that's something I actually had planned on bringing up at some point, and so actually that point is well taken.
Thank you.
Something that might discourage, I don't call them frivolous lawsuits in the future, but something for people to be aware of, that if you
Yes.
come after the city and you're doing it for whatever the court deems is not suitable, that we can go back and recoup the taxpayers' money.
Absolutely.
I like that.
Okay, that's all.
Thank you.
City Manager?
Yes, thank you. We do have your city lobbyist, Hayden Dempsey, available as well. What I'd like to do now is kind of discuss with you all the legislative priorities and to provide some direction to staff. We've received notice from Representative Esposito's office that our legislative delegation will be meeting in January. They have asked for a deadline of December 13th to request an audience. I've confirmed with Hayden we can just request to be heard at that meeting. In the past, myself and the Assistant City Manager has represented us. We're happy to continue to do that or ask any member of council to attend the delegation meeting and present the request as well. That's a decision for council to give us some direction on because we will need to provide the names of those representing us. Typically, it's a 2 to 3 minute presentation. At that time, we would just hit on the high points of our appropriations asks and give them a generalized comment on our legislative policies. You have before you the legislative policies, which is the first page, was what we've provided, very similar to previous years. Last year, we shortened up a little bit with further statements in there. We did want some direction if that's how you see those generalized statements moving forward. And we can continue this conversation as well on the 18th of December because, as I said, the actual hearing is in January. But if there's any revisions or things you'd like to see come back, this would be a good opportunity to give that feedback to staff. And then additionally, after that, we'll walk you through some ideas of appropriations, and we would like feedback on those. And then we'll be formulating, after the first year, we'll be formulating there is actual documentation we will need to be providing to both the House and the Senate for any specific appropriations, because those would be brought in as bills from our local delegation.
Mr. Mayor,
question? Yeah.
I would just say Matt and Arlene have done a great job on this in the past. My recommendation would be just have them do it again.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Chris?
Okay, let me, there has been a clarification that was evidently reached last week with respect to the county and the support of the acquisition of the railroad right-of-way. It's my understanding from Representative Botana and State Senator Pasadomo that the county does not want to join in to the acquisition of the right-of-way. So we're, to move the Rails to Trails project forward, it's going to be up to Bonita Springs, Estero, and Collier County. And I'm just suggesting that we can move it forward. We may have to adjust how we're going to do it. We may just be able to talk about doing the trail from the Collier County line to the north edge of Estero and forget about taking it on up to Alico, which is part of Lee County, unincorporated. It's disappointing. It's a kick in the head, especially if you consider the amount of money that Bonita and Estero pay into Lee County. But they have taken a position and they have told the state they are not interested. It's not worth their time to invest. They are interested in other road projects, which I can only take to mean State Road 82, so forth. And they have, the state asked them if they were interested in pursuing any state Sun Trail monies. And the response was, we have no interest in the Burt's project, so don't count on it. We don't need any of that. Point being is that at the present time, people that are wanting to get this done as I understand it, Adam Botana, State Representative Botana, is going to try to talk to the Lee County Commissioners again. Pasadomo is going to try to figure out a way to go forward, and both are going to introduce bills in the state legislature come the time for filing bills that are in support of Burt. Now, so we're sort of like in Rubik's Cube at this point. We're trying to figure out how all the pieces fit together. And the only thing that I would ask is that we at least include within our legislative request some amount of money for the state to support our efforts to acquire the railroad right away. We typically go up there, we don't, whether it's, and I'm all in favor, Jesse, for example, of whatever we need to do for Roseberry Park. Right. And whatever we need to do in terms of flood control and so forth. But we typically don't prioritize or put those all into a sequence of, well, this is the first priority, second priority. But all I would ask is that we at least put in, for a legislative request, that we get some money to help us get this thing done. Otherwise, we're going to end up with this scar, and I call it a scar, of the railroad right-of-way, which is really right now a piece of crap that runs through Bonita Springs, full of trees and weeds and everything else that former Mayor Steinmeier talked about, looking like a piece of crap, runs through our business district and our park, the Wonder Gardens and everything up through 41 and into Estero, and without the county even being willing to come to the table and talk about, being a partner in trying to get this thing corrected. And so, all I would ask is that, we include that within our legislative ask. And, if we don't, then, we talk, everything Kyle Moran talked about in terms of economic benefit to downtown, the economic benefit to our property values, the favorable cost of buying an acreage of property west of 75 for $340,000 when everything else would cost, $500,000 to $1 million. I mean, I don't know why the county is doing it other than, it's whatever their priorities, but it's sort of a, It's sort of a bad thing that they're saying to us. And so, okay, that's the deal. So they're out. So let's figure out how we move it forward. But if we're talking about legislative asks, let's at least put it on the list and we'll figure it out before we go up to Tallahassee and talk to people. And by that time, we should have some feedback from Botana and Pasadoma about, you know, what's realistic. So that's my ask.
No, I totally agree. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
Yes.
And to see it go by the wayside just because the county's not receptive to it, I think we need to do everything we can in our power to get it done. So.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so I just want to clarify. When you're saying is the county out, or did somebody over at the county say that they're out? Because
this is from the commissioners to Pasadoma.
So we're talking Collier versus Lee County.
No, but so Lee County, he's saying Lee County is
Lee
out.
County.
Lee County's back.
Lee County is out. They have told Pasadoma,
so
we have no interest.
Here's what I hear. I explained this when I was with the Burt people, what's happening with the county right now. And I don't, and this is not based on any conversations I've had, but essentially they're looking at this big multi-jurisdictional expensive project that currently they aren't in charge of and they don't have to deal with. So they're kind of like, if you've ever been to a bar at night and you see a really good bartender and she doesn't make eye contact with you at all, like she doesn't have to actually acknowledge that you want something, so it's not really your turn. The county is not making eye contact with us right now because once they do, now they have to start actually taking it seriously and paying attention to it, and it is going to be expensive on their end, and it's going to be a huge pain in the ass because of all of the multiple jurisdictions that are involved. So they're like, this is a huge issue, it's not currently ours, so don't look at it, and then we're going to have to address it. But the two of the major cities that make up a lot of the county are involved. So I just, if they're saying they don't want it as a priority, it is for fear of them not getting the things on their wish list. But if everybody wanted to be a good partner, we would all put our wish list together and then also put Burt on our wish list as well. But it scares me that they do that because, not that Estero would or anybody else, but if anybody else were to back out and then we stick it on our wish list and then everybody else bails, then this is a pleaser for the electeds. This is a easy win because you're making multiple jurisdictions happy with one thing. So maybe everybody isn't going to get everything they want, but I can vote on this one thing and I can please 3 places at once. So it's a BOGO for the electeds. So it does give me a little pause, and it scares me a little bit that Lee County is like saying they're out. But
you know, I look at it, Jesse, as the one thing Kevin Ruane told me back in August was that there's never been a strategic plan for roads and infrastructure in Lee County in the last 25 years. And if you go back to the 2008 financial crisis, there was a concern that if you maintained impact fees, then developers wouldn't develop housing down here and the housing market would crash along with every place else in the country. So they eliminated impact fees. They eliminated congruency, which said that you basically had to figure out infrastructure and roads before you built houses, okay? Didn't want to do that. So they abandoned impact fees and congruency until maybe 18 or 19. Then they brought them back a little bit. But by that time, they were 10, 12 years behind in terms of planning. And now they've got, according to the Lee County Department of Economic Development, they've got 80,000 housing units that are on the drawing boards. Not that they've been all permitted, but it's how do we get people out of Lehigh to be able to commute? How do we get people out of Daniels west of 75 to be able to commute? How do we service all the industry going up on State Road 82? The 650,000 square foot Amazon facility, which, oh, by the way, let's build more Amazon facilities so we can take retail businesses out of service, okay? And they want light industrial and they want additional warehouses up there. So the focus is on that area of Lee County, and we're just a donor community to that whole thing. So, you know, that's where we're at. And so we sort of need to take care of ourselves. We need to figure out what we can do. You know, maybe we form some sort of interlocal agreement between ourselves and Estero and Collier County, and we find private money, we find grants, but we have to, at least we know the county's out, and we have to proceed with the assumption the county is out. And so, okay, so that's the new game, and let's go forward from here. And all I'm saying is that let's, you know, we'll figure out how we go forward, but let's at least put in something for the ask with the state to say to Pasadomo and Botana and Martin, you know, help us out here while we figure out how we're going to do this.
Nigel?
I think strategically, last year, Jamie, Jesse, Chris, myself went up to Tallahassee and we learned a lesson. We thought we had good faith commitments, and basically what we were told was, well, these two projects that you really, really want, it's only the first time you've asked for them, so you got a better chance next year. I think we'd make a mistake if we didn't put BIRD on our agenda this year, because we may have to wait for the money or the commitment, but at least they know it's a priority and we put it out in public.
Yes, I'm new to this whole process, but I will go ahead. When I made my notes prior to the meeting, I think the first one, Bert was there, and I fully support the initiative there. My only real questions has been, you know, can you designate this at some level as the equivalent of a library board or fire district or whatever that allows for a separate millage, bonding, and that type of thing within the structure across multi. Again, you shake your head, I don't know. I'm just asking a dumb question, okay?
It's not dumb. It's not dumb. But at MTSU, you're talking about, there's so many people who are already on the fence with it now. If you start talking about an independent tax structure on top of it, you're losing half the people who are even abiding now.
Well, I fully understand that, but it puts it to a real cost basis back to our constituents as to, you know, is this truly a need? Is this truly a quality of life thing that you're willing to pay for? And it also provides for a funding source ongoing for the maintenance for the project. Yeah. But anyway, regardless, I think BIRT needs to be part of this legislative issue. The second one is more of a long-range type thing, and it's basically some sort of initiative for the acquisition of available land for environmental purposes in terms of preservation and stormwater management, to dovetail off of some of the acquisitions that the city has done in the past, that I just think warrants continuing requests for that availability to service our priority one in terms of stormwater management.
What is that, when you say that, what does that look like? Are you thinking like Conservation Collier does, or are you thinking like, are us strategically buying properties that have that type of, those type of values?
I think basically it's where we have designated density reduction in groundwater type areas.
Right.
As those become available, is that it would augment what we see in terms of South Florida Water Management District, like we've done just south of Terry Road and Bonita Grand. I see the retention and the impact that decision made by buying that land and the pooling of water that sat there literally for 3-4 weeks after the rains that we got. And I think that if that money were available, that when the opportunity had it, I think it might benefit our city long-term.
I agree. Yeah, let me just give 30 seconds on Conservation 2020. Conservation 2020 was approved by the voters. It accumulates about 55 to 60 million a year. The way it works is the county maintains a $40 million bank account, and it buys conservation properties out of that 40 million, okay? The rest of the money, and if you look over time, let's say the last 5 years, they've collected about 270 million, and they spent about 50 million, okay? The difference goes into the general fund. And so they're not wanting to give up any of this for what I consider to be a linear park, okay? We've been down that route. I mean, Derek Botana has raised that issue. I've been up to that. We have to remember that this Rails to Trails project is a priority of the MPO. This has had all sorts of public input. And the Horizon Council has backed it as well. So it's just simply trying to deal with the commission. So whatever it is, here's the deal. They're out. They're going to stay out. So we now have to figure out how to fix it and go forward. And so that's all it is.
So I think there's consensus to add Bert into the ask.
So,
Okay.
Mayor and Council, I kind of want to walk through, if we can look at page 1, this was last year's legislative agenda. And this will be the sheet that says legislative session January 4th, 2024 through March 8th, 2024. And if I can clarify, I think I understand Councilmember Fitzpatrick was asking for a generalized statement of programs, opportunities for funding for, I don't think there was a specific dollar amount you were asking. It would be sort of the, very similar to the septic to sewer programs where we encourage the legislature to provide appropriate department funding so that those grant opportunities can become available. As a reminder, one of the questions in our briefing he had asked about was we do have a line item in the CIP as a placeholder, as we call them, for an opportunity for environmentally sensitive lands. You've had that in there for a long time. So I think the question is individually totally separate of 2020, is if the council became upon an opportunity that a land became available either within the DRGR or other riverfront property. We've talked about preserving access along the river, a certain drainage area that you have the ability to plan for that and possibly commit funds, or maybe there's a grant opportunity that's created by the state through the DEP or any other such source that that becomes available. So if that's what I understand, this would be.
Yes, thank you for clarifying my word salad.
And then secondly, there's 2 separate places where I think you could provide direction to staff on Bert. You could have a generalized statement that the council supports a multi-jurisdictional rail corridor trail within the city. That could be part of your legislative agenda as a generalized statement that we could add in. And then secondly, you could direct us to staff if you wanted a specific, on the second page, a specific legislative appropriation request. Those are the actual bills that are assigned with funding. We as staff would recommend also that you include in those legislative requests either direct allocation from the legislature on reimbursement to us regarding the beach renourishment, or at least have, as they did with Ian, have them direct DEP to allocate funds for hurricane restoration, beach shoreline restoration.
Well, I will suggest that with respect to the legislative ask, that we're borrowing, what, 4 million from the county, 5 million, that we ask for grants, whether it's 1 year or multiple years, to help pay for that $5 million. And that's due in 28.
The first payment is fiscal. Let him.
It's 4 years starting next fiscal year.
Okay, well,
but
yeah.
the
Somehow
final
we
payment
get grants to pay for the 5 million by the time of 28. And second of all, given where we're at going forward with the purchase of Bert's, I would suggest that we make a legislative request for $20 million to fund the purchase of the right-of-way. Whether we get the $20 million, I don't know, but at least we asked for it.
It gives them an amount to work
It
with.
gives them an amount to work at. So I don't see anything wrong with making a legislative request for 20 million. They'll end up doing with it what they want, but I think we need to make it large enough to make it stand out.
I agree.
I agree.
I agree also.
Okay.
So just, I want to clarify,
Specific request.
no, the specific request, 20 million for BERT would be a legislative appropriation request.
Or for trails.
Yes, for Sun, well, I want to be clear, it's for Bonita Estero Rail Trail, not Sun Trails in general.
Right. It's through a rail trail.
Okay, correct. And then my second clarification, you mentioned grants would you preclude a direct legislative request for the beach nourish? Could we just talk about in general?
However, we get 5 million.
Okay, so we could make a appropriations request for 5 million. Those generally work through bill process, and then we allow our delegates to negotiate for us. So for example, there's been asked before, and then we would hear from the delegation, the delegates that they've coordinated that funding will be made available to Bonita Springs through the DEP or through the DO, that's, so if we just don't want to pigeonhole ourselves to say just grants. If
They'll
we can
figure out a source.
Correct. We just
don't want to pay it out of our ad valorem taxes, or
Correct.
we don't want to pay any interest. However that works.
And then, so I want to just share previously, I think we would recommend that you're far enough along on the Goodwin stormwater drainage and pedestrian safety program that you're far along in the budget in that. We'd probably want some direction on whether you want to continue to include Rosemary
We do.
Drive.
Rosemary's important.
Absolutely.
And then the Lightner Creek neighborhood soccer complex.
We do.
Okay.
We want to
So as I understand, the appropriations that we'd be preparing is 20 million for the purchase of the BERT project within the jurisdiction of Bonita Springs.
Right.
We will continue with the request for Rosemary Drive at 1.4 million. We'll continue with the Lightner Creek Neighborhood Soccer Complex at 1.5 million, and we would ask for the emergency restoration of beach renourishment at 5 million.
Right.
And none of these would be sequented or prioritized. Should our delegates ask for that at a future time, we would need to bring that back to council and get direction from you all.
Absolutely. Understood.
And to clarify, nothing with Goodwin from previous. I think your staff's comfortable with moving forward with the project as funded.
Whatever we need to do with Goodwin, we can reallocate out of CIP.
Okay, and then if I can move you back to page 1, just one more time, I'd like to make an alteration to number 1 of improved stormwater. I'd like to just clarify, not make it individual to Hurricane Ian, but promotes the recovery from active storms, including Ian, Helene, Milton, and all future storms, so we're more resilient. And then I'd like some direction from council on. Councilmember Fitzpatrick asked of adding, and there's 2 spots I think it could fit into. You could fit it under improved stormwater, but environmental protection, you could put a C, which would talk about you're going to support all programs, opportunities, activities that provide an opportunity for the city to acquire environmentally sensitive or properties that are of a significant nature for the city to pursue. And that would be more general, it wouldn't be a dollar amount to those.
That's fine.
Yeah. Sounds good. Any other?
Hayden, did you have anything else you needed to add at this time?
Thanks. Good morning, or good evening, council members. So if I could weigh in on BERT a little. So I attended a call the other day where it was reported that Lee County was not going to be supportive. There's 2 types of in further discussion. It became apparent that Lee County's support, both kind of generally but with specific dollars, is a prerequisite to getting any traction on the BERT project at all. I would say this: there generally there are 2 types of so-called priorities that the city makes. One is specific project requests, and the other is other priorities of the city, home rule, et cetera. There are the group that's working on the BERT project is exploring a number of different funding options. There's funding from the Seminole Gaming Compact and how that money is going to be delivered. There's other DEP programs that have grants. And given I would say this, given the lack of any details on the BERT project, my suggestion would be to add BERT funding as a priority and not necessarily a monetary project. For a monetary project, in the House and the Senate too, but they have forms that have to be filled out. We work with your city manager every year to fill out that form, and that form requires a lot of detail about how the dollars are going to be used and where all of the dollars, state and local, are going to be coming from. And so given where we are, and that form we have, I think, until probably January, early February to turn in. The House, I don't believe, has released its date yet. We're just not going to be able to fill that out unless there's market improvement. We would need to identify, who all is going to be contributing, how much they're going to be contributing, what the total overall cost of it. I mean, we have the $82 million is the result of an appraisal that the Trust for Public Land did, so we know that. But we're not going to be able to show on that form where all the dollars are coming from. I think it may give us a little bit, I say us, everybody who's supporting the project, a little bit greater latitude to negotiate how we accomplish that acquisition if you have it as a priority as opposed to a specific dollar request.
Well, just understand, Hayden, that I'm just putting the 20 million in as a placeholder. It's all going to be dependent upon what the final plans are of Senator Pasadomo and
Right.
Representative Botana and Senator Martin are in terms of helping us out. And so in my mind, we've got until the end of January, as you say, 1st
Right.
of February, to refine how much it is that we're going to ask. I'm just putting in 20 million at this time, making that request just to have a placeholder. And if it's causing a problem, then I understand what you're saying, but to me it's just a placeholder amount.
If I could make a suggestion, maybe at this time, you direct us to have the 20 million placeholder as appropriations, but as we go back, just as Hayden is saying on page 1, maybe we create some language for you as your legislative agenda where there's a generalized support of BERT, like Hayden's saying, so he can use that in his conversations, just like he's going to be using septic to sewer, just like he's going to be using environmental sensitive lands. So as we get further, if we have to pull the 20 million or we have to change that or adjust that, or we come to you and the forms are a concern because of partners or whatever it may be, you still have provided that direction in the legislative agenda too.
That's fine, just with the understanding that, it could end up being 20 million that we end up requesting. I'm not taking it off the table. I'm just saying, let's just treat it as a placeholder at this time, and let's see where Pasadomo and Martin and Botana get with respect to their committees and so forth.
Well, yeah, because you have two running tracks, correct me if I'm wrong, Hayden, at the same time. You have your legislative agenda, which is page 1, which is all the things that Hayden's going to be tracking and advocating for. But then we have the actual specific appropriations, which is the money ask.
Right.
And I'll go ahead.
I just want to point out, and please don't, hold me ironclad, but the city is about 5 miles in breadth, okay, north to south. The rail corridor comes off at an angle, so the guess here is 6 miles. It's not 5 miles. I know it's not 5 miles in length. If you use 14.9 miles and divide it by 82 million, the total number is $33,020,134 for the city, of which we have just shy of 5 million sitting in our CIP. So the 20 million, in a dream world, if we got given 20 million and we had 5 million, you have an $8 million shortfall sitting there. Okay. So What Hayden's getting at is these forms, and if you were here for Matchgate and Matchgate 2.0 at the city council, they want to know exactly where every nickel is coming from. You know, whether, and so if there's an $8 million hole going into this, and if we do put this forward as a direct ask, you know, how do you answer that? So I just want to point that out.
The forms have to be completed with the exact allocation and every funding source.
It's one of those.
Well, not to be too presumptuous, but I think we could figure it out from the CIP and the reserves. If
we had to.
If we had to, you know. Yeah. Let me just say, if we got 20 million allocation from the state, we'll figure out how to get the other money.
Well, I mean, maybe it would make, maybe it's worth saying, if we were gonna have a dollar amount, well, no. We're still gonna have a default. The problem is it needs to be airtight going in, because if they see a shortfall, it's gonna be just out of the stack, because pretty much all the cookies that are half-baked get thrown out. So pretty much they're taking shovel-ready projects that are already approved in most people's CIPs, and all they have to do is turn and go. This is farther off from that. I mean, it's one of those things, kind of like Nigel was saying, maybe we get a piece this year and then we can build on it, but
Well,
I don't.
Yeah, it's a piece this year and it's maybe a piece in 26.
Yeah.
I just don't want to tie the hands of Pasadomo and Martin and Botana.
Yeah.
While they try to figure out, because we're very much dependent upon them in terms of figuring out how this is going to go. So Hayden, that's the thing. It's you know, I don't know. Maybe asking for a specific dollar amount's not the right thing, but you know, I don't want to tie the hands of Pasadoma, Martin, and Botana. You know, talk to them and say, you know, what do we need to show in this request? Because this thing with the county has just happened, where they walked away from us, and now we're sort of trying to figure out how we're going to go at this on the fly. And you know, unfortunately, we're meeting tonight, and we're trying to make decisions. And you know, I'm just trying to throw a number and see if it sticks. But it's all really dependent upon the state delegation. So you know. Whatever that's worth.
I'd like to ask Hayden your opinion. If the city and well, the all interested parties came up with, I'm just going to throw something like $60 million, and we had a $22 million shortfall, but we had pretty firm commitments, and this would include possibly private money that would be substantial, and I'm talking 5 to 10 million, not a few $100,000. Is that something that might, you've dealt with them, would get the county commission to possibly have a change of heart? Or do you think they're really firm in this, we're not interested?
I don't have firsthand knowledge of that, so I don't want to guess.
Okay. Previous experience?
It'd still be a guess. I mean, it's just such a unique situation. It's a unique opportunity and it's an important issue. But it's just a unique situation.
Yeah, and that's my problem in terms of trying to frame this in terms of an ask. You know, so you know, all I can say, Hayden, is we'll try to do the best we can, and you know, if it's 20 million or 30 million or whatever, let's go forward at this point. But understand we'll refine it with more information we get in December and January from the legislative delegation.
All right, I think we're pretty well set on this.
Okay, so I think we have direction, and anything further, we're going to bring back any tweaks, anything on the 18th, and we'll take a vote at that point. But I think we have enough to work with now to put some fine points together. And then Hayden, between now and then, you and I can get together on the forms so we can help circulate that to council so you can see what we'd be looking at as far as applications and information needed, so we can keep you in the loop. Thank you, Hayden.
Thanks, Hayden.
Yep, thank you. Thank you, council.
And while we're at it, in terms of what we're doing the ask, when's the appropriate time that we need to think about making our annual trip up there?
So that is one thing I'd like to, Hayden, while you're still on, one thing I've talked to, I don't know if I've gotten to all of council yet, but one thing we noticed, I think we might want to plan our own trip with you, separate of the, Florida, you and I discussed this, Hayden, separate of the Florida League of Cities. There's nothing that prohibits council from going twice. In fact, many jurisdictions go several times. So early on in the process, it may be very beneficial to have council on your own, separate appointments made by Hayden to advocate for us, still fully participate in Florida League of Cities, or even another follow-up, or we could try to follow up, maybe work with Hayden in some hometown meetings too. But definitely very appropriate to go on in the process very early to meet with them, and we can help arrange that, if you'd like us to work towards that.
And I would just note for the rest of the council that as a council liaison with the Wonder Gardens, they have some requests that they would like for us to consider adding to whatever. It would help them out with respect to certification and so forth of the Wonder Gardens. So whether or not, it's going to be up to you whether we add them or not, but just be aware of that, because I've sort of indicated that we would probably be going up there sometime in January, February, whenever.
I do want to, Hayden, would those appropriations have to come through the city, or can the nonprofit make their own appropriation request? That's just one thing I want to.
They can make their own appropriation request.
Yeah, and I think it's a very good idea, because specifically what happened last year, we didn't realize we were in the situation we were in until League of Cities. Now, if we get up there earlier and we realize that we're behind the ball that much earlier, that gives us plenty of time to refigure a game plan before it's too late.
As long as Jamie wears tennis shoes.
As long as Jamie wears tennis shoes.
I'm going to listen to you next
And I bought new comfortable seats from the car for Chris.
And I think I've mentioned, if it's necessary for that first trip, if there's a need for staff to help you, we'll make arrangements to be present as well, if that helps advocate, to give technical information at that time. I think in the past, there's been times we've done that, so we'll make ourselves available.
We were making some phone calls back and saying.
I think it might be helpful to have a staff member with you to negotiate those things for you.
Yeah, having the two of you there. Because if not, we're going to be calling you between every other meeting anyway.
As long as the staff wears tennis shoes. In case Jesse and Nigel decide to lead the way home.
Enjoy the weather on a nice walk back.
Folks out there are going, what are they talking about?
Some people get lost on the way back to the hotel.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Hayden. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hayden.
The next item I wanted to bring forward to you was discussion regarding the appointment of city council liaisons to various boards. After every election, as members rotate, we give you the opportunity to discuss. We actually meant this as a placeholder to introduce the items today. If there's any you want to move forward with, we're more than happy to take that. Eventually, you'll need to vote on the positions, or we're happy to put this as a scheduled item for your next agenda.
I would say probably move it to the next agenda. I know some people have to head up to Orlando tonight for Florida League of Cities, so.
Yep. Then my next recommendation on that end is we will move your presentation on the preliminary year financial report. There was no action item during that report, so we can provide that for transparency at your next meeting as well. The one I did want to touch on, though, is very, very briefly the update on Hurricane Ian, Helene, and Milton, only because I want to reiterate again to the public that we will stop providing the waiver of permit fees at the end of January 2024. So if you would just, or 2025, I apologize, the end of 2025, there will be no longer the waiver of the permit fees.
Oh boy. I only have a 27 PowerPoint slide.
As long as you go into detail on each
Why
slide.
don't you go into detail, John?
Oh boy. They didn't do it right. All right, well, let's work through this real quickly. I'm sorry they sent this as a PDF, so. This gets into your waivers and it kind of outlines over the past 3 months, kind of gives you a little bit of a trend on where those are going. I know that it looks like it was down and then back up, but really if you look at the overall trend, it's kind of working down and to the right. So we've passed our peak waiver season, if you will. And this gets into showing a little bit of that. Obviously, 2022, after the storm hit, you only had a couple of months. A lot of insurance settlements hadn't taken place. A lot of people were still trying to find contractors. Not a lot of waivers. Most of the permitting activity did take place last year. And we still have a significant amount of activity, but much less than what we've seen the year before. This provides a breakdown in dollar values for those waivers, both by year, by permit type, and grand totals for all of those. What we'll normally see on this slide is that trades are always shown as the greatest number of permits. That's going to be basically all your mechanical type work, plumbing, electrical. We're seeing a lot of those. We see a lot of those on a normal basis anyway. It's reflected again right there. Nothing new. Same thing that you're going to see again. And that briefly brings us to the end of the presentation. So I don't know if there's any questions. I'm hoping I met the time requirement.
I just want, again, January 31st, of course, there's a couple more meetings. Should we see a different trend or you want to provide different direction, but we're providing that information to the public as well.
Yes, so remember January 31st. That's the end of the end.
So, John, if you'd stay up here, please.
Yes, sir.
A concern, just when you were speaking now, you guys have done a great job. I don't want to say we won the FEMA war, but we certainly came out where we wanted to be. My concern now is, can you detect any sort of pattern on the homes that have been identified that we know were affected by floodwaters that haven't applied for permits?
We have information that gives us indications on where damage occurred.
And that we can be proactive about contacting?
We have a plan that shows proactive action that we will be implementing entirely, and we've already begun implementing most of it.
And that our close personal friends in Washington would say, okay, you did your job?
That is what they have already blessed, and they are our very close personal friends.
That's part of the corrective action plan, and so there's documentation now that we are able to receive under the Federal Privacy Act that we're able to utilize in encouraging folks to conform with the proper permits that they need.
That's for the folks at home and the massive audience that we have left here.
Well,
Yes,
and-
that is a very good point, Councilman.
And to point out that the regional administrator gave high praise to staff and to Arlene's leadership in the improvements that we made to stormwater. So I think staff should get just a little round of applause for going through all of that. And it's a nice thing that it sort of said you helped really improve the city. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. Yeah, that was my last item, is to make the public fully aware that on November 21st, 2024, we received documentation from Region 4 of FEMA that we have fully complied with the requirements of the CRS program. Our community will retain their 25% discount. We are not placed on probation. There is no individual surcharges to property owners. We will continue to work with FEMA through the corrective action plan that we've had, which was already many of the programs and policies and procedures we were already doing, but now it's all solidified in a program. And so we're continuing to keep in contact with FEMA as we continue that process. And I would greatly like to thank our community development staff. Tony and his staff, our neighborhood services staff, took the lead. Find every single department, finance, Laura Taylor with our communications plan, Matt Feeney, and also our two consultants who worked as fully dedicated to the cause. So it was completely an effort, and Derek as well.
I want to fight.
Great team effort, really wonderful.
All right, on to mayor and council member reports. We'll start on the left side with Jim.
Biggest thing to report is we have a active and engaged community in District 6 in terms of Valencia. They actively sought out the county commissioner regarding plans regarding 951. Don Scott came down and took about 2.5 hours out of his day and met with about 24 odd residents of the community. Basically assured them in the next 10 to 12 years we won't see 951. That essentially it hasn't even made the second page, which is underfunded by 1.8 billion. So that's probably the highlight since the last meeting.
Nigel?
This didn't make the agenda, but important, and I wish more folks had stayed. I attended the public meeting that was held by the Bonita Springs Historical Society on Saturday, December 30th. I was at the public library. There were approximately 25 members of the public in attendance, not including Councilman Fitzpatrick, myself, and a Fox News reporter who I didn't realize was there. Mr. Derek Botana chaired the session and reported that the school board had been invited but were advised by him that they would not attend. Mr. Botana also stated that he may have to step away from this issue in the future, didn't give any reason or details why. He did state that their online petition has now garnered approximately 1,150 signatures, but was unsure of how many were actual residents as opposed to interested parties. They have currently raised approximately $1,000 in donations, some of that actually coming from other countries. Best guess on the petitioners who are actually residents was 60 to 65%, which is still substantial. It's 500-600 people. Despite the media, or despite some media coverage, most people agreed that their biggest concern was that very few people in Bonita Springs actually know that the school board intends to demolish all the original buildings. Of note, despite my telling the Fox News reporter on Saturday that the school board had informed staff and that 2 members of the school board had told me personally that all the structures were going to be replaced, Fox News ran a story on Sunday. His sources at the school board stated, and this is what he tells the public, that they were planning on taking down some of the historic structure. That's not true. So unless they've changed their minds, they're planning on tearing the whole thing down. I plan on attending the school board meeting next Wednesday at 6 p.m. and would like to address our grievances, either as a member of this council, if it pleases council. If not, then I'll speak as a citizen and a taxpayer. You only get 3 minutes. We've acted in good faith as a council. We all know that up here. And individually. We were waiting on them to give us possible dates for a public workshop that we formally requested over 2 months ago. Instead, at their last meeting, the assistant supervisor made a side note, and they voted to move ahead with the demolition. I welcome your input, and if appropriate, your attendance support next Wednesday. I know that some of our citizens will absolutely be there, and in my comments, I will exclude any culpability on the part of Denise Carlin, our new supervisor, Vanessa Chiviano, and Bill Ribble. They weren't part of those decisions. I'd also ask community development, John, while you're here, if any permits have been applied for by the school board, and to be given notice in the future of any requests regarding our schools in Bonita Springs.
They don't need any.
They don't have to ask. They don't do permits, I don't think.
I thought they did.
I don't think they have.
The school board, good evening, Councilman, the school board has their own building departments. They apply for their own building permits.
So there's nothing we can do.
For the demolition portion of it, but he's about ready to give you a lot more nuance.
Please, give me some nuances, sir.
So I've had this issue before in multiple school districts, multiple parts of the state. The codes regarding building construction apply specifically to school boards. They don't have to follow the building code, the Florida building code, and they don't have to get their permits through the county. However, their site development and all other aspects of the school board site and development do require city review and approval. So I'll have to look into, and we've discussed a little bit internally what the procedure would be on the demolition permits, but certainly the school and the reconstruction of that school, how that school works, its site design, its traffic flow, all of those issues are things that, they will have to follow and probably have to work with, hand in hand with the city to develop a plan that works, because this is not a single-family home where you just do some setbacks and that's it. No, this is a big use. It's going to have large traffic impacts. It's going to have, certain peak hour traffic is going to need to be diverted. All those things, where the parking lot's going to be, where the building setbacks are going to be, all that still has to be reviewed by us. So there's still a huge component of this that is in our favor. Now, one thing that I have not mentioned to date, but it does not look as though the school board is stepping forward and offering us another alternative, is the other available option to us is there is a governmental dispute resolution statute in chapter 164. It has not been used often in Southwest Florida, but it is available to us. So it would be, typically it is designed to prevent local governments from fighting with each other. It basically sends matters to mediation, and if they can't be mediated, then they require that the two boards would meet together to discuss items.
I like that, because honestly, my thought was
Who pays the legal fees?
maybe we file, to get their attention, we file a lawsuit.
It would be required to go through this process before any lawsuits could be filed. So
Then know we're serious.
Well, we've acted in good faith for 6 months, so's our staff. The implications that our staff has hidden something from us or the public, that really frosts me. And the fact that in their hour and 23-minute meeting, which I've watched twice, they spent literally less than 2 minutes. And I forget the gentleman's name. Arlene, what is the name of the assistant superintendent?
I don't recall.
Whoever he is, his comment was that there are a few people in Bonita Springs that are emotionally attached to the school. I found that offensive. I mean, that was his comment, and then they just moved it forward. So I don't think we have a lot of time on our hands. I think we get the ball rolling now, but I'm asking council, may I go up and reiterate basically what I just said now, but also just call out the fact there are some facts, timed dates, how long they've known about this, the architectural, the fact that they've thrown out numbers that are not supported by any documents as far as what it's going to cost them to, or would cost them to do it, rehab it. And we can make jokes all we want, but as far as I know, they still haven't mitigated the termites in a neighborhood that is filled with single-family homes, a lot of them made of wood.
I would be supportive of you going, I may consider going myself. I wonder if anyone thinks it's appropriate.
I would love to have everybody here.
What do we send? Can't we send Derek?
No.
No, seriously, why not? He gets 3 minutes. He could get 3 minutes on our behalf, and he could probably make a pretty damn good argument to make them want to pay attention to us.
So what I'll point out is that process under Chapter 164 is essentially what you've already been asking for. So what I would recommend is, before you force the school board into a process you're asking them to voluntarily participate, you make every last, and it sounds like you're
One more attempt to do it the way we've done it in Bonita all along. We've been the gentlemen and the gentlewomen about this.
And then what we would do is you would need to pass a resolution to initiate the process. We can do that on the December 18th meeting.
I will get with Derek and give you my verbiage for the 3 minutes. And I'll stay on a holiday in the night before, so I'll have my law degree the next day.
And as far as sunshine, if anybody else goes, are they allowed to speak also, or are we just delegating?
They're allowed to speak, but I wouldn't assume. I do not wish and do not believe that this should get to an acrimonious path between two local governments. And I wouldn't want to add any quivers to any arrows to anyone's quiver in the argument against us, saying that by having their multiple members there at a meeting or any such issue. It'd just be simpler for one person to go, state their point, one last opportunity, and then once, it doesn't sound like it has gotten enough attention. And once the process starts, there'll be requirements to move forward, and there'll be either facilitation through mediation or there'll be a joint meeting. But at least it'll be forced to move forward.
In previous ones, though, just to clarify too, is sometimes you've designated one speaker, but you sat in unison together.
Right, and we could all wear like shirts.
No, just wear your city council, but they'll get the attention, be there. I would be so grateful if as many of you as possible could come up there, because I know we're going to have some citizens, but there is strength in numbers, and it's just like this. We've probably got 10, 12 people that are members of the public here tonight. More people, the more, and if we can get, and I'm not going to discourage them from doing it, members from the public, from Bonita Springs, who are concerned about this, are going to go up there and speak. Mr. Moran, you're sitting there. You're one of the most eloquent members of our public, and you used to live in Bonita Springs. How about come on, move on back and go up and speak for us?
We should get the families. We should be talking.
We're already on that.
Yeah, the kids really should be at the center of this. I think one of the great tragedies here is the underinvestment in this neighborhood's kids. And we are talking about a beautiful building, and it's a 19th century building.
Well, we know all that.
The Great Wall, the pyramids, Hadrian's Wall. It's not even birthplace of a president, right? And we have a lesson too with the good bread preservation, where unfortunately a lot of good intent turned into the world's largest paperweight, and it's not a positive factor. So I think that the Lee County School Board should be ashamed of overlooking Bonita Springs, just as Lee County Commissioners overlooked us again with the rail trail, and the emphasis should be on the 550 young children.
I didn't mean to open this up to public discussion. I'd love you to say all that next Wednesday. Thank you. Sorry.
Just to let people know, I had another discussion with Richard Gardner today, the chairman of BSU. He expressed concern with the speed at which BSU staff is meeting the requirements for the flow charts and so forth of how things work and coordinating with the city. I reemphasize that community development, John Dahmer and staff are anxiously awaiting further developments. Richard was upset with his staff, the board, as the board leader, and expressed concern about that. He also expressed, for Matt's benefit, the concern of the entire board of BSU over, and I don't know exactly what this is, but it involves, I think, a project on East Terry where there's like 82 items of controversy over a two mile stretch. And, you know, it was Richard's and the board's concern that, what are we doing here? I mean, this is nuts. So I just wanted to, you know, so he's pushing as hard as he can. And I'm pushing as hard as I can to try to, as I can, to relieve some of the pressure on whatever we're doing, although I don't know exactly all the specifics. But I understand that Richard knows more of the specifics than I do, so maybe that's a good thing. And so continue to move along, and hopefully we can get this permitting process straightened out. I would also say that I've met with other committees and other concerned citizens, and I continue to hear that our website, and I don't mean to be critical, but our website is not the easiest thing to use. Like, for example, who's on the technology advisory board? Who's on the tree board? Just trying to go click, 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 and find things. I would just say that I would encourage staff to take a look at what Palm Beach has done. They have put on at fairly low cost a artificial intelligence, whatever, intro to their website that allows somebody that's using it to say, who's on the technology advisory board? Type it in, and it comes out. And it's been done at a very low cost. It's also been done in Covington, Kentucky. Jim Kaufman and I talked about that today at a meeting I was in. There are a number of people that have expressed concern over our website. Maybe upgrading to something called Copilot with Bing or whatever, but some form of artificial intelligence will help people navigate our website. So I would just encourage staff to maybe, when they get a chance, I know they're very busy, but take a look at it. That's it.
I just want to provide one update, which I had a chance to brief everyone on, is, so we did have our quarterly meeting with BSU yesterday, and so some of the topics you discussed were brought up, and we're also talking about some long-range goal visioning, specifically the downtown. So we're going to follow up with some additional meetings. We've also encouraged Andy to attend any future strategic planning sessions that we have, to have his staff a part of that, so they're understanding some long-range goals that we have infrastructure-wise and how we can partner together.
Let me also say that as part of the conversation I had with Jim represents the fire district, okay? So the fire district deals with BSU, much like any business or residence, so forth. So they're under the same kind of permitting process. So the fire district operates under a national fire code, so that whatever the permitting issues are get traced back to a code. The problem that the fire district has with BSU is that they deal with people at BSU that have a personal preference about how something should be built. And they're under the same frustration that sometimes Matt expresses and people that are trying to do business in Bonita Springs express. And that's what Richard and I are trying to work together on. So, you know, this isn't easy. It's tough stuff because just the historical way of how engineers have worked at BSU. So we hope to make some progress.
Laura?
I'm good.
Jesse?
Yeah, Holiday in the Park was awesome. So
Oh, yeah.
I just wanted to say good job to staff on that. It was beautiful. I get messages from people I never even hear from about how we were just at your park. It was so beautiful. Bonita Springs looks so great. So always glad to hear that. So good job to staff on making a really, really great Holiday in the Park.
Same thing I was going to say. It looks beautiful downtown. So thank you to all the staff for the hard work with that. And in regards to the fire department, Chief DeWitt told me today they're in hopes to have Station 27 opened towards the end of December and operating.
Mayor?
Yes.
I'm neglected to say this. This is the meeting when I got elected 2 years ago. This is the kind of meeting that I wanted to come to and be a part of. So kudos to you, and I think we got a great council.
Well, better counsel anyway.
Despite you, Chris.
I think.
So, I'd just like to reiterate the event last night was great. Everybody had a, spectacular time. It's beautiful down there. Staff did an amazing job, and I mean, from all departments, we had people pitching in to help out. So, thank you to everybody, and that's Bonita. That's why everybody comes here, because it's we put on a great show like that. Item 12, public comment. All right, seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
All right, so moved.